The Carolina Panthers have their deepest wide receiver core in recent memory, and I cannot wait to see these guys get to work in 2025. We'll talk all about the Panthers wide receivers right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as we continue into off-season mode here on the show. But do not worry, in a couple of weeks, we're back to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and your team every day, which, of course, is our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, where you can hit me up in my DMs on Twitter or just simply at me there on Twitter or Blue Sky with any questions you have throughout this offseason. A weekly Wednesday or Friday mailbag will be back at some point in time here in the near future, but just be a little patient as I will answer some of your questions there via my DMs or just the @ mentions there on Twitter and on Blue Sky. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We're back again for another position group preview as we're previewing the 2025 season for your Carolina Panthers, counting down the days to training camp here in Charlotte. Doesn't have the same ring. I loved going down to Wofford and Spartanburg, but it's here in Charlotte and no fans allowed. But I will be there, boots on the ground, giving y'all updates throughout training camp. So hopefully you tune in for all of that and we can break down what's going to go on this season. On Monday, we talk about Bryce Young. Can he continue what he did in the second half of last season heading into this 2025 season? On Wednesday, we took a look at the running backs, talking about Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle. Are they the best running back tandem in the NFL? And today, we're going to talk about the Panthers wide receiver group. And I am so excited to see what these guys do this season. This, to me, is by far the deepest wide receiver group they've had in a while. Like, I cannot remember the last time that they had a wide receiver group that was this talented. Possibly you go back to the 2020 pandemic season when Curtis Samuel was here, DJ Moore was here the first year of Robbie Anderson. All three of those guys went over 1,000 yards all purpose. Same with Mike Davis, who was the running back that season. Maybe that's the most talented, the wide receiver core they've had since this period of time right here in 2025. I don't know if it's the deepest, but certainly there's a ton of depth there in this wide receiver room, and I cannot wait to see what happens with this group this upcoming season. I have a couple of questions when looking at it. Going to do things a little bit differently on this position group preview. The number one question that I have is something that I've discussed before, but I'm still thinking about. It's top of mind for me. Will Tetairoa McMillan, the Panthers' 8th overall pick, immediately become one of the top young wide receivers in the NFL? Go back to last year, a very deep wide receiver class, which Xavier Legette, who we'll talk about later on, was part of as the final first-round pick among those wide receivers taken there in the first 32 picks of the 2024 NFL draft. But 3 guys went in the top 10. Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State, Malik Neighbors from LSU, and Rome Odunze from Washington. Looking at their seasons last year, every single one of those guys, each of them, showed that they are one of the top young receivers in the National Football League. Marvin Harrison Jr. maybe did not have the massive season that a lot of people thought he was going to have last year, but still 62 receptions, 885 yards, 8 touchdowns. Pretty damn good for a rookie wide receiver. Malik Neighbors was actually better and much better than Marvin Harrison Jr. was last year as the clear-cut number one option there in New York. Had 109 receptions, 1,204 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He was outstanding. Then Rome Odunze as the number 3 wide receiver up there in Chicago behind our old friend DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, had 54 receptions, 734 yards, and 3 touchdowns. All of those guys, I felt like, lived up to the billing. Maybe didn't exceed or meet every single expectation, but those guys are clearly on track to being the number 1 wide receivers eventually for their teams there in Arizona, in New York, and in Chicago, respectively. Maybe it takes a bit longer for Rome Odunze because DJ Moore's there, but still, he is going to be at least a 1B to DJ Moore's 1A and in the near future for the Chicago Bears, now coached by Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams heading into his second year. If you look at their stats, their final 2 years in college, Neighbors at LSU had 161 receptions. Odunze had 167. Harrison Jr. had 144. Tetairoa McMillan, 174. So more receptions in his last 2 years at the University of Arizona than all three of those former top 10 picks from a season ago. Looking at their total yardage in their final 3 years, Malik Neighbors had 2,586. Rome Odunze, 2,785. Marvin Harrison Jr., 2,474. Tetairoa McMillan, 27-21. Only Rome Odunze had more receiving yards than him in his final 2 seasons. And then touchdowns, Neighbors had 17, Odunze had 20, Harrison Jr. had 28, and then McMillan had 18. So his stats are very comparable to the stats of the guys who went in top 10 last year, which leads him to, of course, going in the top 10 this past year. Very clearly the best wide receiver available in the market. You also saw Matthew Golden from Texas, the former Houston player. He went in the first round, and so did Emeka Buka from Ohio State, also going in the first round. And it really comes to opportunity when you look at it. Harrison Jr., he went in there. It was Michael Wilson. It was Greg Dortch. He clearly was going to be the top wide receiver on the team. Did not end up being the top receiving option on the team, as Trey McBride, the tight end, had a breakout season leading the team in receptions and receiving yards in the desert this past season. But clearly, if you're having any conversation about who is the number one wide receiver in Arizona, it is Marvin Harrison Jr. You look over in New York with Malik Neighbors. He stepped in there. They had Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton, 2 fine role players in a wide receiver room, but he clearly stepped into a role as the number one guy. And then Rome Odunze, his situation was different than Chicago's. Now, the Bears were not good. We all know why they were able to be in the position they were in to be able to get him and, of course, get the number 1 overall pick. But certainly he stepped in the situation behind DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, 2 veterans, 2 guys who have been number ones in their previous stops and even in their current stop. DJ Moore at least was in Chicago last year. So not that much was expected out of Rome Odunze last year, but still, again, 54 receptions, 734 yards, 3 touchdowns. Really, really nice season for him. You look at Carolina this year, Adam Thielen, his last year in all likelihood as a Panther, maybe in the NFL. We'll talk about that a little bit later on here on the show. Xavier Legette, still questions about just how good he's going to be here in Carolina. There's opportunity to be had for T-Mac to come in here and to be the top wide receiver on this team. And when you listen to Dave Canales, he's doing all the things that you want a young guy to do. And that's the entire rookie class, that being said. And you listen to J.C. Horn and Bryce Young and Adam Thielen, all these guys talk about how he's a sponge, he's a competitor, and he is doing everything that you would want a guy out his stature in his position to come in and do early on in his tenure here in Carolina. So I put this out there already. I feel like at least 60 receptions, 850 yards, 6 touchdowns, and that would be putting him right there on the same tier as Harrison Jr., as Neighbors, as Odunze, the other top 10 guys who went last year in the draft at that wide receiver spot. So I'm just wondering, will he live up to my expectations and quite possibly your expectations and the stature of being a former top 10 pick and put up those kind of numbers that those guys last year put up in the NFL during their rookie seasons? That's what I want to know. That's what I want to see. I am really excited about Tetairoa McMillan being here in Carolina and giving Bryce Young a true number 1 wide receiver. Has to pan out, but he has the ability to absolutely be that for Bryce and for Carolina in the years to come. But there's also questions about the second-year guys. Xavier Legette, first-round pick last year. Jalen Coker, UDFA from a year ago. Both had impacts here in this offense. And Adam Thielen, the old man in the room, is it his last year? And what will his role look like in 2025? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If you think that OKC is going to take Game 7 on Sunday night, or if you think that Indiana is going to take Game 7 on Sunday night, why not back it up with a same-game parlay new to FanDuel? It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Full disclosure, I did that FanDuel read on Wednesday when recording this show, so if the NBA Finals are over, don't yell at me because I had to get this show done. Going to be traveling a lot in July, so banking a lot of shows, getting them recorded a little bit earlier than I typically do. So anytime something like that happens, just want to be transparent. It's because I recorded earlier before that happened. So just guessing. Hopefully I got it right. If I got it wrong, then so be it. But we're talking about the Panthers wide receiver group heading into 2025. Very excited about this position group, probably the most exciting group to look at ahead of the season. And even as the season plays out, of course, quarterback is big, but they needed to get Bryce Young some options after that disastrous 2023 season. Yes, a lot of that was on Bryce, but a ton of it was on the offensive line, which has been fixed. We saw that last season and last offseason, and now the wide receiver room, which I believe has been fixed, at least has the depth of talent to be so much better than it has been in recent memory. And just look at it. It took 2 off seasons to bring in the wide receivers to fix it. It took really 1 off season to fix the offensive line. It takes a little bit of time to get your roster where it needs to be. And I do think Carolina's roster offensively has the requisite talent for a quarterback like Bryce Young heading into a very important year 3. Now, looking at a couple of other questions I have pertaining to this wide receiver core heading into 2025. How big of the leaps are Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker going to take in year 2? And will they have that opportunity to do so? Now, looking at their stats from a year ago, Xavier Legette, 49 receptions, 497 yards, 4 touchdowns at a 44% receiving success rate, 58.3 catch percentage. Also had 8 drops, and some of those, like the one against Philadelphia, the one against Cincinnati, really costly for the Panthers being able to win those games, mainly really the Philadelphia one. And yes, he had an issue with his wrist. He said it wasn't a big deal. He's since had some, I think it was a procedure actually on his foot that had disturbed him from going all the way to training camp. But he said the wrist's not an issue. And okay, if he says that, that's what he believes. But we'll see how it plays out. Had a 14.0 drop percentage. So not ideal. It was the 13th highest graded wide receiver among the rookie class last year, and not necessarily what you want to see from a guy that the Panthers traded up from 33 to 32 to get, mainly because of the 50-year option, also the conviction that they had in XL. He told us pre-draft last year, the Panthers said, if you're available, we're going to take you. And, well, I guess that was true. The Panthers must have told him that, and he was very transparent with us, which he has been. And nothing but honest with us throughout his time in Carolina. Just a delightful dude to be around, and love hearing him talk, of course. But need to see him take a major step this upcoming season, because I don't think people are going to be laughing and feeling so giddy about Xavier Legette if he's not going to play better than he played last season. Again, just a rookie, but a guy who didn't do a ton in college until his final year there in 2023 than last year. Had, of course, a much better season than the wide receiver they had taken a year prior, that being Jonathan Mingo, who was jettisoned from Carolina before they traveled over to Munich, Germany to face off against the Giants. So XL, solid rookie season, but certainly left a lot to be desired as far as drops and being able to see that explosiveness in this offense. Jalen Coker, really, really nice season for a guy who went undrafted. 32 receptions a year ago, 478 yards, 2 touchdowns, had a 58.7 receiving success rate, 69.6 catch percentage, 0 drops. He was the 6th highest graded wide receiver among the rookie class, according to PFF. You look at just both of those guys, though, they ranked in the top 10 in receiving yards as rookies at 9th and 10th, as well as the top 10 in receptions at 7th and 10th. And there was a graphic, I believe it was either I don't know if it's PFF or FanDuel, but someone had put it out there just looking at some of the rookie pass catchers, and the Panthers are up there a ton, whether it was Legette, Coker, Sanders, all those guys together, which makes it really exciting to see what they can be moving forward. And my big question is just what's the step these guys are going to take in 2025? And for Coker, I asked this a couple weeks ago, like, what is his role going to be? When you look at it, like Thielen, his role is not going to be diminished. They gave him pay raise. We'll talk about that monetary structure here momentarily. Tetairoa McMillan, I mean, they drafted native overall, and he's already playing the X position, so he's going to be a starter. Of course, XL, who Coker outplayed last year, if we're being honest, he's going to be out there as a starter as well. So after that, there's guys like Hunter Renfrow who we're going to talk about, Jimmy Horn Jr. Does Jalen slot in comfortably as that fourth wide receiver, or if Hunter Renfrow is the guy he was back in 2021 when he was a Pro Bowler in Las Vegas? Can you actually put Jalen ahead of him? Is he going to have to kind of pseudo redshirt this season? He doesn't get the eligibility back. Not like it matters with the contract that we're looking at. And then he comes back next year when Adam's likely gone, and we'll see how things play out with guys like Hunter, and then he can step back into that wide receiver 3 role. We will see. I'm looking just at some of the numbers as far as it goes of XL to try and compare past guys to figure out what he could do. And if you look just at the wide receiver class from a year ago, I know we talked about the top 3 to go, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze. Not fair to compare him to those. You got to look at guys like Xavier Worthy, who went 28th overall. Ricky Pearsall went 31st overall. Keon Coleman, who went 33rd overall. Lab McConkey, who went 34th overall. And even Jalen Polk, who went 37th overall. Those are the tier of wide receivers that he is in. And Worthy, nice season. I mean, he played with Patrick Mahomes, so that really helps. 59 receptions, 638 yards, 6 touchdowns. So certainly had a better year. Ricky Pearsall, who, mind you, was shot before the season, had 31 receptions, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns in 11 games. So quite possibly if he plays full season, about being in Shanahan's offense with Brock Purdy, probably would have had a better season than XL. Keon Coleman, 29 receptions, 556 yards, 4 touchdowns with Buffalo, who has Josh Allen. Lab McConkey, playing with Justin Herbert, had one of the best, probably the second best receiving season for all the wide receivers last year. 82 receptions, 1,149 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And then Jalen Polk was awful last year for New England. So thank God Carolina did not take him. 12 receptions, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns. I know as a guy who said I'd take any of the Washington wide receivers. Jalen Polk, hopefully year 2 there. Now with Mike Vrabel's head coach, Drake May in his second season. Hopefully for the Patriots' sake, he can be better, and for his sake as well. But he was an abject disaster for New England last season. So just look at that group. It's hard to say that XL is better than Worthy. I don't think that was the case. Pearsall certainly can make a case, but I don't know. And then Keon Coleman, he is pretty up and down. So maybe you can say, yes, McConkey, certainly not. Polk, absolutely he was. Like, those are the guys that you're going to be comparing him to moving forward. And I don't know if it's fair at this point in time to compare him necessarily to Lad McConkey, just looking at just how well Lad played. But Worthy, Pearsall, Coleman, and Polk, those are the guys in this tier. Now, you go back to 2023 and look at that draft class. It wasn't the deepest wide receiver class. There's only 3 guys were drafted, all going in the 20s, that being Quentin Johnston from TCU, Zay Flowers from Boston College, and Jordan Addison from Southern Cal by way of Pitt. Very controversially, might I add. He's not Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers came in and immediately got the job done, and I love Zay when he's at BC. Played for some horrible Boston College teams under Jeff Hafley. I guess they weren't that bad, but Jeff Hafley now the DC in Green Bay for a reason. His decision, but still for a reason. And then Jordan Addison, great at Pitt, not as great at USC, but still really good player. Both those guys came in and immediately made impacts, playing with Lamar Jackson in Zay Flowers' case, and playing with Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold in Addison's case. Kind of crazy. I put Sam Darnold in that same category as a competent quarterback. But Quentin Johnston didn't really come out and do a ton. So maybe he's the comp as far as what you would like to see from XL in his second year in the NFL. Now, he's a younger prospect. It took him 3 years at TCU before deciding, let's go to the NFL. He's part of that TCU team that got destroyed by Georgia in a national title game, but that's not really important. That was an awesome season for Sonny Dykes and the Horned Frogs. Year 1, in Los Angeles, had 38 receptions, 431 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So not ideal. Then last year, new head coach and Jim Harbaugh, new offensive scheme with Greg Roman, 55 receptions, 711 yards, and 8 touchdowns. 2 of those coming up against Carolina in week 2 in that road win for the Chargers. If that's what XL can give you, combined with what you're going to get potentially from Tetairoa McMillan, which I said 60, 850, and 6 as far as receptions, yards, and touchdowns, you give me that, then I'm happy. And really, if he gives me that or the Panthers that for the rest of his career, being in that 700, 800 mark of 8 touchdowns, 50-plus receptions, I think you take that. Absolutely. So that's the kind of leap I'm hoping that he can make this year for himself and for the Panthers' sake as well. So I think that's the kind of comp to look at when looking at Xavier Legette. Now, another question I have as far as just all of this, because this goes into what's the role going to be for a guy like Jalen Coker in his second year. Adam Thielen, like, is this it for him? It's year 12 coming up. He's played the last 2 in Carolina. He did say last week at mandatory minicamp that he would not still be here if it weren't for Bryce. And I'm sure that's him alluding to Bryce Young's turnaround in the second half of the season. I don't know whether that's him retiring, asking for a trade, but he is now back here again in Carolina on a reworked 1-year deal. He's getting $8.5 million. He was set to get $6.75 million before they came to terms on the final year of his 3-year deal here in Carolina. He does have a per game active bonus. So if he's active all 17 games, gets $500,000. He has the incentives, receiving yards over 800. He gets 250,000. Same thing with 1,000. And if he gets over 1,250, that's 500,000. So that would be $1 million if he reaches that. Then you look at receptions, he gets $1 million if he reaches 100. And if he receiving yards, plus playoffs. So if you do playoffs as well, they give him even more if they get the playoff berth. If he gets with 600 reception plus a playoff berth, 500,000 plus playoff berth. If he gets 750 and then 1,250 plus playoff berth, 750. So that would be $2 million if he's able to go over 1,250 and the Panthers go to the playoffs. And he's been really good so far. 151 receptions for 1,629 yards, 9 touchdowns over 27 games. I do think this is it for Adam. I think he's earned the contract negotiation that they went through as far as giving him more money and the incentives that are placed there for him. I don't know. I could see him hitting the 800 one. I could see him definitely hitting probably the 71. And there's only one ball to go around, so it may be difficult. And there's going to be a team I think is going to run the ball a little bit more than they did last year. But in the NFL nowadays, you throw to win, you throw to basically to get ahead. And then you run the ball to win games because you have the lead. You're trying to salt the game away. We'll see if that's what Carolina's philosophy will be this upcoming season. But Adam Thielen, in all likelihood, probably done after the season. And it will be interesting to see just what his role is going to look like as you have younger guys like Tetairoa McMillan entering into his rookie year and expected to play a big role. And then, of course, Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker stepping into roles again in their second years. So that is something to look at heading into the season for Adam Thielen and for the Carolina Panthers. How many guys are going to make it? It's going to be a tough one to figure out. Dave Canales said as much last week. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. How many receivers are the Panthers going to keep? This is going to be a tough one to figure out for the Panthers this year. Last year, they kept 7 guys. Now, after roster cutdowns, they decided – actually, we're only going to keep 5 of these guys as Ihmir Smith-Marsette. He was let go, had an ankle injury, so they got rid of him. And then Jalen Coker was, unfortunately, he was cut from the team. The Panthers, fortunately, were able to sign him to the practice squad. So then they end up only really keeping 5, that being Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, Jonathan Mingo for the time being, and David Moore. So looking at it this year, when pretty much throughout last season, they had like 5 guys, will they end up keeping 7 again? And Joe Person from The Athletic did ask last week on the final day of mandatory minicamp. He asked Panthers head coach Dave Canales about the number crunch there at wide receiver and fighting for the final spots. And Dave said this, quote, I think it's going to be very difficult. I think that we're going to have to take it through the preseason games and see who can help us. And special teams is going to be a huge piece of that puzzle. How can these guys help us in coverage units? Can they help us as a returner? Those things that add a value. If it's even, the special teamer makes the team. And so that's the part where we get to challenge our guys, find a role, take this thing seriously. You're not here to just catch passes. We only get so many helmets on game days. So we need all of you. We need you to contribute in different ways. I break it down into tiers. And honestly, it's really difficult for me to even tell you right now who's going to make the team because there's just still so many unknowns. Like there's questions I have about the guys who are guaranteed to make the team, like Adam Thielen. We just talked about it. Is this it for him? And if so, with the contract, not extension, but the raise that he was given, is he still playing the same role? Are they going to maybe limit him at his age, being 35 this upcoming season, and with some of the talent behind him? Xavier Legette already talked about what's the leap going to make. Is he going to make a Quinston Johnson type of leap? Tetairoa McMillan, is he ready to go? Be wide receiver one right off the bat. Jalen Coker, again, kind of what's his role going to be? Like those are the four guys who I believe are guaranteed a roster spot. And you could ask me why guarantee a roster spot to Jalen Coker if you're so not hesitant, but I don't think it's confused, just unsure. There we go. Of what role he's going to play this upcoming season. I think that'd be a fair question. But looking at guys who I think are on the roster bubble, David Moore, best season he had since leaving Seattle. His second stint here in Carolina did not make the team. When first coming here, I believe it was in 2021. He did last year with Dave Canales, who brought him back to Tampa the year prior when Dave was in his lone season as the OC under Todd Bowles for the Bucs. David Moore, who kind of turned out to be like the number 4 guy because Deontay Johnson got traded away. Adam Thielen, he was out for 7 weeks, and then Coker missed some time. Legette, he had, I think, only missed a game or so. But David Moore, fine season, 32 receptions, 351 yards, 3 touchdowns. Started 5 games last season at a 39.7 receiving success rate, 51.7 catch percentage, and was the 88th highest graded wide receiver among those who qualified according to Pro Football Focus. So I think there's value there. He can be a returner for Carolina. And we talked about Raheem Blackshear on Wednesday, how wasn't that great of a kickoff returner, was better as a punt returner. But does that make sense to bring him back again with other options on the roster? And understand Moore knows the scheme. He was in Seattle with a lot of these guys, and he's a vet. So I would think that it probably one of those dudes where you cut him, you don't guarantee a salary. You bring him back after week 1 because I don't know if there's going to be a ton of teams trying to claim him off of waivers necessarily, but that's something to monitor. Hunter Renfrow, this is the one that everyone, of course, is really excited to see how that potentially plays out and maybe being a Adam Thielen replacement if Adam ends up retiring and leaving after this season. You look at Hunter Renfrow back to playing football after missing out last year. He was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, an autoimmune condition that caused him to drop down to 150 pounds, which is not football playing weight, of course. And he spoke to Panthers.com recently, and he said just about his health that, quote, honestly, this is the best I've felt since probably 2021 by far. Really, the last 3 years, I struggled my last 2 with the Raiders, and last year just really struggled with fatigue. But this is by far the best I've felt since 2021. It's like anything. Rome wasn't built in a day. And I'm sure that David Tepper loves that quote. Just taking it day by day, stacking good days, and telling yourself, even though you don't feel great, that it will get better. You just keep pushing through, putting one step in front of the other kind of mentally, kind of mentality. And I feel like I've done that. And every day I've felt better and better and better and better. 4 betters. Those are his words. I'm still not exactly 100% where I want to be, but I feel a lot better. And then also saying, I feel like my body has adjusted well to the load. Not that OTAs is an incredible amount, but I've been pleased. My body felt better than I thought. And he's probably one of the guys, and I don't think this was ever going to be a concern, but he's probably one of the guys where Dave Canales is saying, as his final message to the team, like, this isn't a vacation that you're taking across the next 5.5 weeks. Like, you need to be ready to go. And Hunter Renfrow, I'm sure, in this Carolina heat, is going to be out there working his tail off, trying to not lose that weight, but trying to get ready for training camp and what's going to be expected of him. Because if he's physically there, then it's hard not to think he's going to be on the roster. And he says it's the best he's felt since probably 2021, the last time he was truly healthy. He was a Pro Bowler that season, 103 receptions, 1,038 yards, 9 touchdowns. I don't expect him to put those numbers up because, again, there's only one football, and all these guys got to get fed, and they're going to each have different roles. But damn, Hunter Renfrow, is back to being of that caliber, even if he does not get that amount of opportunities, hard for me to think that he's not going to be ahead of Jalen Coker this season. So he's another guy in the roster bubble. Really comes down to his health, his conditioning, and if he can recapture the 2021 level of talent. Jimmy Horn Jr., 6th round pick, the final draft pick of the 2025 draft for the Panthers, had 95 receptions for 1,008 yards and 7 touchdowns in 2 years under Deion Sanders up there in Buffalo for the Colorado Buffaloes. This is Boulder. Did I say Buffalo? I meant to say Boulder. But whatever. Looking at Jimmy Horn, the concern I have right now goes back to what Dave Canales said about if it's close, the special teamer will win. Now, he's considered the guy who's going to have to be a special teamer for this team, whether it's going to be a returner, as a kick returner, or as a punt returner. Missed some time during OTA's mandatory minicamp because of hamstring. I think probably more precautionary than anything, but he's going to have to be ready to go, and he cannot have any sort of setbacks. If that happens, it's quite possible, because we've seen this in the past, where if he does have a setback like that with the hamstring, that maybe they just decide to put him on IR, have him be done for the entire season, then bring him back next year, especially if they're looking at their numbers and are saying it may be tough for you to make this team this year and then you're injured. Let's just do that, give you time to sit back and learn and get healthy, and then we'll use you again next season. I don't think they're anywhere close to that, but I'm just putting that out there as a potential option if there's any sort of setback or if this hamstring continues to be a problem for Jimmy Horn. But if he's going to make the team, it's going to have to be as a returner, beating out guys like Raheem Blackshear, like David Moore, like Trevor Etienne, and whoever else may be out there who's going to be asked potentially return kicks this season. And another guy I got to add to the roster bubble is Dan Chisena. He played 6 games last year. You may recall in the game against Arizona, the OT win, there were some late possessions where Bryce Young, for whatever reason, was targeting Dan Chisena on 3rd and 4th downs. How on earth that becomes a situation, and that kind of speaks to the wide receiver injuries they kind of had late in the season. But he played 45% of the special team snaps that were available to him in those 6 games, and that's the way to make the roster. So he's somebody that I'm going to put on a roster bubble because he was on the active roster last year, and they did call on him in some pretty critical situations late in the season. So cannot ignore him. And then the final tier here is practice squad option / UFL bound. Jacoby George from Miami, he'd be in there. Colby Hudson from UCF. Both those guys have talent. TJ Luther and then Bryson Tremaine. Those would be the 4 who right now, just to me, probably aren't on the roster bubble as of this moment, but guys that you would want to continue to develop on the practice squad throughout the season if that's how things play out. So that is a really interesting Carolina Panthers wide receiver room. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show for free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And we're back on Monday talking tight ends. Tommy Trimble back this season, but questions about whether he'll be ready to go for training camp or even for week 1. And they got a new tight end in town, and Mitchell Evans and JT Sanders apparently coming in looking really good. What kind of step is he going to take here in 2025? Talking about all the tight ends here on Monday on Locked On Panthers.